In June this year, a 911 operator took a pretty extraordinary phone call.
Dispatch.
Hi there. I was calling to speak to a deputy.
Okay, what's in reference to?
The person taking the call is in the sheriff's office in the rural community of Danville, Ohio.
I'm in Danville, so I wasn't sure if there was somebody in Danville that was on duty that I could just talk to. I could even go down to the police station.
The woman said that she had some concerns about her son after she found a large cache of guns and ammunition in his bedroom.
He's wanting to leave this weekend and go with a group of people to help, fight the corrupt government.
The police arrived at the house to meet her 19-year-old son, Tyson Proper.
Hey, what's up, Tyson? What's up? Just wanted to see what was going on.
Turns out Tyson had been communicating with a large group of men online, and they were all planning on meeting up.
Where'd you guys plan on meeting up?
West Virginia.
The guys had all given themselves code names: Shepherd, Fulcrum, Whiskey 6. Tyson was Prox. It was all very cloak and dagger, except for the fact that one dude's code name was Shriveled Schlong.
So you want to go to another state and meet up with people that you don't even know their real name?
This was a few days before the big UFC event at the White House.
Welcome to UFC Freedom 250. Here is the President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump.
Tyson and his gang were allegedly planning to attack the event with explosive drones. When the explosions went off and people started to evacuate, the gang were going to shoot at them with sniper rifles. They had amassed weapons, tactical gear, and other supplies.
By an AR,
They told
by
you
a shotgun,
Oh, I took pictures of it.
and then
thousands of rounds of ammo.
The sheriff decided that all of this was a bit, concerning.
I'm concerned that you might have gotten caught up with something not so great.
Yeah, okay, so the sheriffs in Ohio seem pretty understated.
So if you don't mind, if you want to grab some shoes or something like that, we're going to take you to KCH and have you talk with the behavioral specialist.
Tyson Proper and 7 others have now been indicted on charges of conspiracy to murder federal government officials and other targets, including President Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, Elon Musk, and Benjamin Netanyahu.
He's really angry about the Epstein files, which rightfully so. We're all angry about it. But this is not the right way to deal with it.
He and the others are facing potential life sentences. Fortunately, the plan was foiled before anything could happen. The problem is not everyone's mum is going to find out about it and call the cops. There was a time when lone gunmen were the main threat to the president's safety, but now this kind of thing is happening too, with increasing frequency.
Make no mistake, this was an attempted assassination of the President of the United States.
To make matters worse, this is all happening at a time when the US Secret Service is in the midst of a crisis, one they have been facing for more than a decade.
The Secret Service was experiencing a staffing crisis that poses perhaps the greatest threat to the agency.
I've been taking a look at the state of the US Secret Service myself, and it's really bad. The agency is critically understaffed, underpaid, and seems to be regularly on the brink of catastrophe.
You've reduced their training down to such low levels that you combine that with fatigue and you're looking for a disaster.
So today, the story of how an agency in turmoil is facing an almost impossible challenge: keeping the president safe by predicting the unpredictable. I'm Matt Bevan, and this is If You're Listening. Whenever the US president travels abroad, a team of Secret Service special agents travel to the location 2 weeks beforehand to basically case the joint.
The advance teams would go out, roughly 15 and sometimes even 20 days, depending on the nature of the visit and the type of summit.
Their job is to make sure everything will be okay when the president arrives.
It's the cars, it's food, it's medical supplies, and it's the whole White House is actually moving regardless of the length of time that the president is traveling.
Now, as you can imagine, this process involves the team doing recon around locations, checking rooms for listening devices, advanced meetings to ensure that everything feels safe and secure. But completing all those tasks apparently doesn't take the full 2 weeks. And so the Secret Service team apparently has a bit of free time on their hands, which is why, until relatively recently, the Secret Service seems to have seen these advanced trips as basically government-funded holidays where all the agents would party from the time they arrived to the time the president arrived. And there was one particular trip in 2012 to Cartagena in Colombia, ahead of President Barack Obama's visit to a summit, where this partying got out of hand. Now, the agents were clearly very excited for this trip, as evidenced by the very serious and official email correspondence that they were sending to each other in the lead-up. One of the emails read, "Swag cologne, check. Pimp gear, check. Swag sunglasses, check. Cash for dem hose, check." Now, I'm pretty confident that there wasn't an official budget line in the Secret Service accounts allocated to financing, quote, dem hose. But back in 2012, these advanced visits often involved paying for sex workers.
Agents and members of the military preparing for the Summit of the Americas brought at least 20 foreign women into this Summit hotel.
The morning before President Obama's arrival, one of the Secret Service agents refused to pay a sex worker who he had convinced to spend the night with him a bill of $800. He reportedly thought that prostitution was illegal in Colombia, so she would be unable to report this to the police. He was wrong, and the police arrived to investigate. It wasn't long until the media found out too.
The scandal erupted over the weekend in Colombia and involves at least 11 agents, about 10 military service members, and as many as 20 women.
Understandably, the whole incident was incredibly embarrassing for the Secret Service.
I do have a lot of jokes about the Secret Service. You know, I told them for $800 I wouldn't tell them, but they only offered $30, so...
The fact that the Secret Service behaves so badly in Colombia shows one thing: they do not respect the president or the office of the president.
But worse than that, it exposed a very, very serious problem at the very heart of the Secret Service, one that puts their whole mission at risk. But before we get to that, I think it's important to understand exactly what the Secret Service actually is.
These are the Secret Service agents who are prepared to give their own lives to protect the Commander-in-Chief.
The story of the Secret Service starts on the 14th of April, 1865, the day President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. Lincoln had signed the legislation creating the Secret Service just a few hours before his death, which feels very ironic, but the Secret Service he was creating wasn't designed to protect the president.
I had always thought the Secret Service protected the president since the service was established back in 1865. But Walter explained that this duty actually began with Theodore Roosevelt after the assassination of President McKinley in 1901.
This is from a US government film called The Secret Service Story, and it's mostly about the thing the Secret Service was actually designed to do.
Now, most folks would never notice the tiny check letter and the faceplate number in the lower corner of every bill. But the Secret Service calls attention to them for identification purposes in its printed warnings of new counterfeits.
Yeah, turns out the Secret Service was originally created to prevent the scourge of counterfeit money.
Another thing to look for are the sawtooth points on the colored Treasury seal. On most counterfeits, they're blunt or rounded off. On the genuine, they're sharp.
It took 3 presidential assassinations in 36 years, Lincoln, Garfield, and McKinley, before the government decided that it might be worth organising bodyguards for the chief executive.
Today, of course, watching over the president is the #1 job of the Secret Service.
In 1901, the Secret Service was the closest thing the federal government had to a national detective force. So protecting the president was just kind of added to their job description. It seems weird to give a bunch of guys who signed up to look at the corners of banknotes the job of safeguarding the president, but the FBI didn't exist at the time, so this is just what they decided to do.
Whether the president travels on water, on land, or in the air, the Secret Service is close by, prepared for any emergency.
And even after the FBI was created, these jobs weren't reshuffled, which means that even now, a career as a Secret Service special agent generally means transferring backwards and forwards between protecting the president and investigating fraud and counterfeit money cases.
The chief reminded me that protection of the president was our number one job. But he also said that suppression of counterfeiting and forgery was important too.
They call it their dual mission. And look, it doesn't really make sense. I mean, having guys who are experts in what a president's head should look like on a dollar bill might be helpful in trying to protect the real-life president's head from harm. But logical or not, it's an incredibly difficult job to qualify for. They have to pass extremely strict physical and mental tests and be able to meet the requirements to obtain top secret security clearance and sign a document saying they're willing to work anywhere in the world. This is all a very lengthy process. Recruitment, testing, and training typically takes over a year, and then special agents are sent off for at least 3 years to a field office to check whether the spikes on the Treasury seal are pointy or rounded. Then, after all that, they're cleared to watch over the president.
For no Secret Service man can tell when his training and his judgment may save the life of the President of the United States.
The point is, this whole process takes a very long time. So if an agent was to hypothetically not pay a Colombian sex worker and then create a very big and embarrassing scandal that resulted in them and many other agents being fired, replacing those agents would be an incredibly lengthy process. And well, that's exactly what happened in 2012.
We have a zero tolerance policy for any kind of conduct of the kind that was that involves prostitution or anything of that nature.
The Cartagena incident led to around a dozen agents leaving the Secret Service, which, in the scheme of things, isn't a massive deal. But the scandal brought an extra level of scrutiny onto the agency, which led to revelations like this one.
In September of last year, a security contractor with an arrest record rode in an elevator with the president in Atlanta armed with a gun, completely unbeknownst to the president's detail.
Which is about as big an oversight as you can get. So let me tell you how that came about.
Good afternoon, everybody. Please be seated. I want to thank Dr. Frieden and everybody here at the Center for Disease Control for welcoming me here today.
When the president visits a government building like the CDC, the Secret Service sends a form to the agency asking for the details of any security personnel who will be on site and whether those personnel will be armed. The Secret Service then runs background checks on those people. On this occasion, the CDC filled out the form, listing the names of all of their security guards and stating that all of them would be armed. They returned the form to the Secret Service, but apparently it just sat on somebody's desk and nobody read it. So no background checks were run, and Obama's Secret Service detail thought that the security guards would not have guns. Despite this, when they arrived at the CDC, they handed out pins to all of the armed guards, which were meant to indicate that they had been vetted. One of those guys was Kenneth Tate, who had worked for the CDC for a decade.
We got a radio call that the president was pulling in, that they were coming in. That's everybody get a standby, so I go to the elevator and I prepare myself for them to enter, make sure everything is open and everything is standing by.
Kenneth's job was to take Obama upstairs in the elevator.
His staff got on the elevator, then he came and he got on the elevator. He acknowledged me, he asked me what my name was, and he extended his hand and shook my hand.
Now, Kenneth had a record of arrests, but no convictions on domestic assault and firearms charges, which the Secret Service would have known had he been vetted. But there he was, in an elevator, with a loaded gun in his holster, standing right next to President Obama. Fortunately, Kenneth kept it in his pants, but this was not a good look for the Secret Service. And then, to make matters worse, 2 days later, this happened.
Folks, everybody turn around, head out the gate here. You're going to have to go out to 17th Street, please.
The Secret Service is coming under renewed scrutiny after a man scaled the White House fence and made it all the way through the front door before he was apprehended.
The man was apprehended in the East Room of the White House residence, like the bit of the building where the president sleeps. Obama wasn't there at the time, but still, not great for the Secret Service. Every time an incident like this was uncovered, there were resignations. Morale at the agency was dropping, so even more people resigned. Eventually, congressional hearings began, looking into what was going on, and they found something staggering.
The Secret Service, at its peak, had a staffing level of 7,024 employees. This was in 2011. That number declined every year until the beginning of this year when the agency had 6,289 employees. But by all accounts, you're some 500 to 1,000 people short of where you should be.
In 2015, a congressional report titled An Agency in Crisis was published, which showed that a massive contributing factor to the mistakes being made by the Secret Service was that staff were being forced to work ridiculous hours to make up for the swathe of resignations and the slow recruitment process. The following year was an election year, which meant that the Secret Service had to not only keep President Obama alive, but all of the candidates trying to succeed him, including this guy.
Whenever I saw, I'd go to places, I'd have 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 bikes, and Secret Service would go crazy. I say, no, I'm so happy.
Candidate Trump loved hanging out with armed bikers, despite the Secret Service advising that that was a bad idea.
And Secret Service and all the law enforcement, they say, sir, I don't know if you're safe here. I say, I'm the safest guy in the world right here.
At the end of that year, Congress took testimony from Secret Service agents to see how they were coping.
And these are quotes. During this year, I've missed holidays, birthdays, and other life events. This has been ridiculous. It's far worse than 2012 campaign. Thankfully, I'm not married, but if I was, I'd probably be divorced by now. Another agent, I averaged 43 days before I get a day off. It goes on and on.
Now, Secret Service agents do get overtime pay, but at the time, their pay was limited to a maximum of $160,000 a year. And this overtime meant that many of the agents were hitting that cap hard.
I've been one of the detailed leaders since beginning this campaign, and I'm currently over $60,000 over my pay cap. My wife feels as though she's a single mother and there's no financial benefit. I'm not getting paid.
In an attempt to alleviate the crisis, agents were pulled away from their important duty of, looking at the cash through the microscope and pulled on to protection details, which meant that 2016 was a fantastic year to print fake money. Nobody was checking for it. The agents that were on duty were exhausted, burned out, and grumpy that they had reached their pay caps, and so they were essentially doing unpaid overtime. Thankfully, there were no serious security incidents during the 2016 campaign, nor during the 2020 campaign. 2024, of course, was different.
Take a look at what happened.
Secret Service agents rushed a bloodied Mr. Trump off stage. An attendee was killed and 2 others were critically injured.
The attempted assassination of Donald Trump at a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, led to the resignation of the Secret Service director.
The assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump on July 13th is the most significant operational failure of the Secret Service in decades.
It was followed soon after by another incident.
Authorities allege the man was hiding in bushes near Donald Trump's golf course in West Palm Beach, Florida.
The gunman was hiding in bushes next to the 6th hole. Trump was playing on the 5th.
They have an agent that jumps 1 hole ahead of time to where the president was at. And he was able to spot this rifle barrel sticking out of the fence and immediately engage that individual.
Later investigations found that in 2024, the Secret Service was understaffed by more than 20%. The agents on Donald Trump's detail worked an average of 454 hours of overtime that year. That's the equivalent of 11 extra weeks of work on top of their normal workload. 1,973 Secret Service staff hit the pay cap that year. And so in 2025, the Secret Service started a recruitment drive.
Sometimes being a hero means staying in the shadows. The United States Secret Service is calling for a few more heroes. Will you step forward?
While hundreds of people signed up, very few will make it through the screening process. Also, they've got to look at counterfeit bills for a few years before they get to the White House. So the problem of understaffing isn't going to be fixed anytime soon. But look, the record of the Secret Service since the last presidential assassination in 1963 is pretty good. Aside from one of Ronald Reagan's ribs, one of his lungs, and one of Donald Trump's ears, they have managed to keep every president and former president safe from physical harm for 63 years. But the trouble is, the kind of operations that the Secret Service is having to deal with are getting more complex. Lone gunmen used to be the only threat that presidents faced. But now it's groups of gunmen and guys like Asif Merchant. This is a video that was secretly recorded in 2024 in a hotel room in New York of Asif Merchant talking to a guy that he thinks is an assassin. He's explaining his plan to assassinate Donald Trump at a campaign rally. To make sure the assassin understands his plan, Merchant pulls out a napkin and lays it on the table to represent the crowd of people at the rally, and then he uses some objects to represent Trump and some of the tall buildings which could be used for sniper positions. Now, it turned out that the assassin was in fact an FBI informant, and Asif Merchant was later arrested. He has since testified at trial that he was an operative of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps of Iran, the IRGC, and that he was on a mission to hire a hitman to kill Donald Trump. He has been tried and found guilty of what has now been called the napkin plot. Over the next few months, another 2 men were arrested and indicted for working on behalf of the IRGC to hire hitmen in America. They said that they had also been ordered to kill Trump.
An alleged Iranian plot to kill the president led to beefed up security ahead of last weekend's rally.
All of these plots were apparently organised by the Revolutionary Guards as revenge for Trump killing one of their top commanders with an airstrike during his first term as president. And since Trump killed the Iranian supreme leader in an airstrike in February of this year, the IRGC is only ramping things up.
Let's go live now to Ankara, the Turkish capital, where the US President Donald Trump has just touched down for a crucial NATO summit there.
In July this year, President Trump was the closest he has been to Iran since the beginning of the war back in February. He was less than 1,000 kilometres from the Iranian border. During the summit, he clearly had Iran on his mind.
I'm number one on the kill list for Iran. They're lovely people. I'm number one.
And the reason he was thinking about Iran trying to kill him is because, according to the Israeli spy agency Mossad, that's exactly what they were trying to do at that exact moment. Mossad said that they had picked up signals intelligence that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps had an unusual amount of information about Trump's movements and sleeping arrangements at the NATO summit, and that an Iranian proxy militant in the area may have a shoulder-launched missile.
After officials determined there was a credible assassination threat against Donald Trump from Iran.
The US officials reportedly were sceptical that such an attack could actually be pulled off, but the Secret Service decided not to risk it.
The White House says it uses every tool at its disposal to address threats against the president.
Trump boarded the Air Force One jumbo jet before being secretly loaded onto a catering truck and transported to another plane, which he then flew on to the UK.
So I go by Secret Service and the military. They wanted me to go on a different flight, a different plane, equal safety, but they wanted me to do it, so I do it. I do what they say.
The entire American delegation flew out of Ankara safely, with no evidence that any missiles were fired. But if this plot was real, that's an entire new level of threat. Until the last couple of years, the Secret Service's main fear was lone gunmen, but now they're reckoning with both alleged domestic terrorist attacks, but also international terrorist attacks orchestrated by the IRGC, who apparently have surface-to-air missiles and intelligence on where Trump sleeps. For every IRGC plot the Secret Service or FBI foil, another 2 will pop up in their place. They've got all the time in the world, and they only have to succeed once. The thing is, complex potential threats like this are happening with increasing frequency. And as we've established, the Secret Service isn't exactly firing on all cylinders. So what's the solution? Well, the congressional report into the shooting in Butler, Pennsylvania, recommended that Congress and the Department of Homeland Security should consider separating the dual missions of the Secret Service. Stop making the president's bodyguards moonlight as the counterfeit money fraud squad. Mind you, that's been the obvious fix for about a century. Now, does this 20 look fake to you? This one appears to be Chinese. Rounded edges on the Treasury seal. Yeah, that's Scottish. Probably not legit.